Hi, so good afternoon, everyone. This is Shihan from New Venture Corporation. We are the organizer of the webinar today. Welcome aboard. So solar power as one of the clean energy sources has become more and more penetrated into our lives over the past decade, especially for the industrial sector. By bringing solar energy into factories and industrial parks will not only save your electricity expenses, but also contribute to your corporate sustainability target. So therefore, regarding this market focus, during this webinar, speakers will give their opinions and interpretations on the topic of the way to permeate solar into our lives for a greener future, industrial application of distributed solar in Vietnam. And now I would like to give a brief introduction and a big welcome to our speakers for today. They are Mr. Dong Chi Liu. He is the founder and partner from DNA Vietnam LLC. Mr. Lee Chong Boon is the head of product and marketing from Trina Solar APAC. And Mr. Arnold Reiser is the business development director from Asia Clean Capital Vietnam. Ms. Tran Bui, the energy project manager from Deep Sea Industrial Zone. And last but not least, Mr. Milan Kov is the founder and chief executive officer from Hexagon Peak. So for today's webinar, we will first start with a 10 minutes plenary speech given by Mr. Lee Chong Boon from Trina Solar, following by another 10 minutes plenary speech given by Mr. Arnold Reiser from Asia Clean Capital Vietnam. And then we will start a 45 to 50 minutes panel discussion given by all of our speakers. So please note that there will be Vietnamese simultaneous interpretation for Mr. Lim's presentation. So later on, please kindly switch your channel based on your language preference. And the organizer of today's webinar, New Venture Corporation, is dedicated to supporting keen investors and developers for successful development and investment in Asia-Pacific renewable energy sector. Our footprints cover Asia-Pacific countries such as Vietnam, Philippines, Thailand, China, Myanmar, Australia, Malaysia, Singapore, and some Middle East countries. And before starting the webinar, I would like to introduce all attendees with some housekeeping notes. So if you experience any technical issues or you have any questions for our speakers, please do feel free to use the below Q&A box. And after the webinar, we will share the presentation slides and the webinar recording with you by next week through your registration email. And now I would like to go ahead and hand the microphone to Mr. Lim from Trina Solar to deliver his speech.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you.
Xin chào tất cả các bạn. Cảm ơn các bạn
organizing this
đã tham gia
from Trina Solar. So, and thank you everyone for the time for participating in the webinar today. So let me start my presentation. So just a very brief introduction about Trina. So we are founded in 1997 and have been in the industry for more than 20 years, supplying different solar panels and solar solutions to the market. So these are a few key milestones in the progress of Trina Solar as a company. So one of the most major achievement is that we have listed ourselves onto the Shanghai Star Market last year. So being a long-time brand name in the industry, we are also the top most bankable module supplier, ranked by Bloomberg New Energy Finance for 5 times in a row since 2016 to 2020. In terms of our footprint in Asia Pacific, so over the last 3 years, we have shipped almost 9 gigawatt of module, definitely the top 3 in this region to our customers in the Asia Pacific region. So in terms of leading technology, for Trina, we have launched our 210mm module series since about late last year. At the same time, we are also working on different new technologies like the N-type popcorn and also the advanced HJT. So this is a very brief history and look back on how the module power has developed over the last 10 years. So it has become very exciting, especially since the last, I would say, about 1 to 2 years' time, where we see a jump in terms of the module power. So this is made possible by the introduction of different technologies that we have brought into solar panel manufacturing. And at the same time, if you look at what has happened in 2021 June, as NEC, one of the biggest solar exhibition in China. So we see that more than half of solar companies or manufacturing company have actually showcased the 210 mm models, and these are with power bin between the 600 to 700 watt. So looking at this, the 210 mm will be the up and coming trend as more and more manufacturers start to use larger wafer size to make solar panels. So as for Trina here, we have started supplying 210 mm since about late last year. So we have already commissioned numerous projects all over the world. At the same time, we still have a lot of different projects that is asking for these high power modules. So this is a brief outlook at our current product roadmap. So as mentioned, we have started our 210 mm 500 watt since 2020 Q3. And then following that, we have launched various other models with the power bin increased to 550, 600, and 660. Similarly, we also have a smaller footprint, which is targeted for residential and the small C&I projects, mainly in the 400 watt range. So this is the comprehensive product model list that Trina is offering now. So on the top half, you can see these are the 166 mm models. The below will be our 210 mm models. So basically, we are able to cover the different applications in terms of residential, commercial, industrial rooftop, and also farm utility projects. How do we achieve these high power bins? So these are the 4 key technologies that we are using in the Trina solar modules. So starting from the top left corner, now we are using the largest wafer size to make our solar cells. And with this larger surface area of solar cell, we also increase the number of bus bar. So now we are using our 12 bus bar for our big high power modules. And because solar cell is bigger, we also upgrade our cutting technology, non-destructive cutting. And the last one on the bottom right is the high density interconnection. So this is basically we minimize the gap between each cell so that we can increase or improve the module efficiency solar module. So just a bit more details into our 210 mm 500 watt, 600 watt, and 670 watt. So this is available both in the monofacial backsheet and also the glass bifacial. So we look at one example, 550 watt. So this is using the different technologies as mentioned earlier and based on the 5x11 layout half cut cell. So this is based on a low voltage, high current design. So you can see here in this slide, this is like a recap of what has happened over the last 10 years where string power as compared to the system voltage. So maybe 10 years ago, we are only able to connect like 10 pieces of module string. As the technology improves and as the system voltage increases, now we are looking at connecting more than 30 pieces of module string. So this will help to drive down the US cost at the system level. So using an example or case study of a 1 megawatt industrial rooftop project, so we compare between 540 watt and 545 watt. So we can see here that we are able to connect more modules in series and the string numbers actually reduces, the string power increases. So when we break it down into 100 kilowatt array size to match with a 100 kilowatt inverter, so these are some of the details of the equipment build we can see here. So we will see that number of modules decrease slightly, but we can see that the cable, DC cable length use is also decreased. When we put it together into a 1 megawatt system, these are some of the key figures that we can see. So overall, the string power is for 545 watt is definitely much higher compared to 540 watt. The total number of modules are also reduced and the string numbers are reduced. So we get savings from DC cable length that's used in the whole system. So when we do it at the US costs and saving simulation, so we can see that for this particular case study that we have simulated here, we can save up to about $0.0064 per watt at the system level. So next, I also like to take the chance to also introduce our latest ultra high power 670 watt module. So you can see here, this is based on the 66x2 layout, 182 cells. Dimension is about 3 by 1.3, and also based on a low voltage, high current line. So we get a lot of questions on, as the module size become bigger, how can we ensure that the performance, the reliability of the modules are the same as previous generation of solar module. So we have done extensive testing, and we have published a few reports, including the static mechanical test load and 5 other rigorous tests to include different scenarios. So we are happy to announce that Trina ultra high power vertex module, because of the improvement in the frame design, some optimal design in terms of the thickness, larger frame chamber, etc. So we are able to maintain the same mechanical loading as required in the front 5,400 Pascal and the back minus 2,400 Pascal. So the details can be downloaded from our website with the link below. So to accommodate this higher or this bigger dimension modules, we also need to look at how we can arrange and ship this module. So on the left is the conventional 2-tier stack, where the modules are like horizontal. So for this ultra high power large dimension module, we have changed the packaging vertical placement. So you can see this is how it will look like inside the carton box. And when we put it into a 40-foot high cube container, this is what it will look like. So you can see that although the number of panels reduced, but actually we are having more power per container as compared to the lower power bins. So same, we also put this ultra high power module into a mounted project simulation. So as compared to 540 watt, we do see savings coming from the POS and also a reduction in the LCOE. So for this unique design of low voltage, high current, so the key point to take note is that we need to be compatible with the top major inverter suppliers. So we have been working with various key inverter suppliers, especially on the string inverter side. So these are the few models that's already compatible with Trina high power modules now, or probably in the next 1 quarter. So in terms of ground mounted projects, we also work with the tracker suppliers. So the top 8 tracker suppliers also have optimized their design and is compatible with Trina ultra high power modules. So these are just some of the examples of projects that we have already commissioned and supplied. So this, you can see that these are the industrial rooftops using the larger vertex modules. Of course, the high power modules can also definitely be used on the ground mounted utility projects. So lastly, this is our Trina Vertex family. So we have models, I would say about 5 key series here. So start from the left is our Vertex S, targeted for a residential rooftop. And we have the 500 watt, 550, 600, and 670 watt, which will be able to supply to all the different segments, including the commercial industrial rooftops and also the ground mounted utility projects. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, back to you, Shahan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Lim, for your presentation. And now I would like to go ahead and hand the microphone to Arnold for his plenary speech. So, Mr. Arnold, you can share your screen now.
Sure. Thank you, Shihan. Thank you for having me. So it's a pleasure and a chance to present to you Asia Clean Capital today. I'll make a short company introduction covering who Asia Clean Capital is, what we do, and some case studies. So let's start this off with our introduction. So Asia Clean Capital is an international renewable energy solutions developer that is focusing on rooftop solar and with over 150 megawatts of systems in operation. We are offering a fully integrated investor operator model that aims to help large corporations and multinationals to first decarbonize their energy supply and also improve their ESG performance. A bit of our company's history and company's milestone. So our ACC business started in China more than 10 years ago, providing ground energy systems across the country. A few years later, in 2015, we launched our rooftop solar business that was focusing mainly on foreign invested and high power consuming industrial facilities. We acquired quite rapidly significant blue chip projects with famous companies like you see it, Unilever, Coca-Cola, Danone as well. This rapid, let's say, business expansion drew attention of investors like Goldman Sachs and the Danish Climate Investment Fund, who respectively invested $40 and $10 million in ACC in 2017, 2018. And in 2019, we announced, that was a big milestone for the company, we announced a joint venture for ACC China with the French utility giant EDF, and we extended our operations to Vietnam with the establishment of ACCV in August 2020. So ACCV, we are headquartered in Ho Chi Minh City. We're bringing to the Vietnamese market over a decade of experience, in financing and developing and operating renewable energy projects across the region. We've done it for over 25 projects with over 150 megawatts of systems that have been installed and over $100 million deployed so far. So now, as of our strategy in Vietnam, we are offering the same turnkey solution that drove our business successfully in China, meaning that ACCV intends to invest 100% of the project capex. We also design all the systems with our in-house engineering teams and according to the most advanced standards in the industry. We managed to get all the local regulatory approvals, whether it's with EVN, with the firefighting department, which is named the PCCC in Vietnam, and so on and so forth. We build the project, we connect the system, and we provide long-term maintenance service during the entire contract duration, so our customer can enjoy actually the savings with full peace of mind. With this end-to-end solution, we are offering what we call solar as a service under 20-year power purchase agreements, in where ACCV sells the electricity directly to the clients for its self-consumption. So we created this model to remove the financial obstacle actually to going green and also create ongoing value for our customers from day one. As I mentioned in my introduction, our mission is not only to help all these large corporations and multinationals to fight climate change, but it's also, assisting them, in achieving their CSR target in its entire dimension and improve also their ESG ratings. To do so, ACCV has dedicated and passionate in-house ESG experts who are here to both screen our internal processes to make sure we are compliant with the highest ESG performance across the whole value chain. And they're also here to work hand in hand with our customers to ensure effective carbon emission reductions and also assist in obtaining green building certifications such as the LEED ones when it's possible. So now to illustrate about a bit more what we do with concrete examples, I'd like to introduce you 3 of our ACC case studies, ACC success stories, I would say. The first one is our project with Coca-Cola in Henan province. This is the first LEED Platinum Coca-Cola plant worldwide. And by installing this 2.5 megawatt rooftop solar system, ACCV significantly contributed in obtaining not only the LEED certification, LEED Platinum certification, but also helped Coca-Cola to achieve their renewable energy use, which was set for 2020. Coca-Cola is a member of the High 100, and you can see on the right-hand side all the benefits and savings that the customer enjoys from our partnership. As we are, innovators in the industry, we also strive to bring new technology when the project specification allows it. It was the case for this project with Tsuneichi, which is a shipbuilding company, the Japanese shipbuilding company operating this shipyard in Zhoushan province, China. And ACCV built an 18 megawatt BIPV project and owns the world record for the largest BIPV project. BIPV stands for Building Integrated Photovoltaic, which integrates directly the solar panel into the roof structure. So you can see at the bottom right, the picture, the panel is directly installed. It's actually replacing the traditional metal steel roof layer. So it has a dual purpose. The first one is that its covering is serving as the outer layer of the roof, but it's also generating electricity for on-site use. So there's multiple key advantages in using such technology. The first one is that it replaces the traditional roof. So it's much more durable. Traditional roof usually lasts for between 10 to 12 years. The BIPV panels, which are made of PV panels, are much more closer to 25 years lifetime. There's also a lot of savings that can be done on the construction cost and on the roof replacement cost because ACCV financed the project, 100% of the capex. And in some cases, it can also solve some waterproofing issues, and it reduces as well the indoor temperature by usually 3 to 5 degrees. Last but not least, I want to introduce you also one of our projects here in Vietnam with one of the, let's say, most prestigious and leading American semiconductor manufacturer located in Saigon High-Tech Park. It's not a big project in terms of system capacity, but it's very meaningful in terms of standards and expectations from this client. It's a lead facility, and the design which was made for this flat roof project is really a first-class design, and safety measures have been really high for this project. That's it for me. I hope you enjoyed this short presentation, and I hope you also understand that we are not brokers. And if you're looking for a professional and experienced investor operator for your rooftop solar projects, please get in touch with us, and we will work it out for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Arnold, for your presentation. And now it's time to start the panel discussion session, the way to permeate solar into our lives for a greener future, industrial application of distributed solar in Vietnam. So the moderator will be Mr. Dong-Chi Liu. And for the panelists, we are glad to have Mr. Arnold Reiser, Ms. Tran Bui, Mr. Milan Kov, and Mr. Lin Chong Bun. And I will go ahead and hand the mic to Mr. Liu. So let's welcome.
Thank you, Shiha. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's my great pleasure to moderate the session today. In this session, we will basically discuss about the way to permeate the solar into our lives for a greener future. Basically, we'll focus on industrial application of solar power. So I think to start with, I would like to introduce myself. I'm a partner of DNA Vietnam LLC, a law firm based in Hanoi. We advise our client to basically develop a renewable project in Vietnam or acquire a renewable project in Vietnam. And, with all the other relevant work like financing, EPC, and basically, it's a full package in relation to project development. And also, I would like to, we just heard Mr. Lim from China Solar and Mr. Arnold Reiser from Asia Clean Capital Vietnam to introduce themselves and their company. So I think I would like to introduce Mr. Milan Kov and Ms. Chang Bui to also make an introduction of themselves. So may I start with Ms. Chang, please? Ms. Chang, I think you're on mute.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Liu, and thank you everyone for joining the webinar today. It's a pleasure for me to join. My name is Chang and I'm from Deep Sea Industrial Zones. I'm currently in charge of developing the power and the renewable business for the group. Deep-sea Industrial Zone is one of the biggest industrial clusters in Vietnam. We are located in the northern cities of Hai Phong and Quang Ninh, of over 3,000 hectares, with direct access to the deep-sea ports and also the highways. Deep-sea today, apart from its core business, we are also executing a number of pioneering initiatives to achieve our sustainable development goals in renewable energy, in preserving and growing the greenery, in recycling the waste and the water. And most of our efforts today focus prominently on developing the solar and wind energy for the industrial zone. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chang. Mr. Milan Koev, can you tell the audience about yourself and the company?
Thanks, Mr. Liu. Thanks, Shihan, for inviting me and setting up this seminar. Happy to be on the stage with all the panelists. Hexagon Peak is a project developer. We have developed about 50 megawatt in Vietnam. We are currently in the process of signing up about 200 gigawatt hours of offtake agreements with large corporations for the upcoming DPPA program. And in addition, we are starting a investment fund which will be dedicated to acquisition of operational projects in Vietnam and else in Asia. That's in brief.
Thank you very much, Milan. So yeah, I think now we can start with our discussion session. So yeah, with it's a topic that I mentioned earlier. I guess our discussion today will focus on how we can basically make further investment to rooftop solar for greener future. Right? So I think my first question would be for Mr. Milan Koev. So as you know, right, as we all know, I think so far we have around 10 gigawatt of rooftop solar already installed, and with that capacity available already, so how do you think about the market potential in Vietnam at the moment? And can you share with us, the location that you are focusing on now for developing your project, and if you expand in the future, what would be the location you would look at?
Sure. I think it's the development of the rooftop market in Vietnam is unfortunately following the same trends as other countries in the region, where we had seen a tremendous expansion for a very short period of time and significant slowdown after such expansion. A couple of mistakes have been done by the regulatory authorities, including EVN, by not setting a cap on installations and by not trying to sort of prevent frauds. I think it became very obvious that last year there has been about 40 to 50% of those projects, so-called rooftop projects installed, being I call them a fraud, because these are essentially not rooftop projects, but installed somewhere in the middle of nowhere on an agricultural land with higher mounting structures, which were supposed to act as a rooftop. Now, this has not been prevented by the government. Of course, they'll pay attention in the future, but essentially this has hurt the entire industry because we have a lot of rooftop projects, perfectly legal, technically very feasible and economically profitable projects that are being curtailed because of this fraudulent projects. And I think that has been a clear indication that something is wrong. And again, a few mistakes which I hope going forward will be, if there is a third round of feed-in tariff, particularly for the rooftop space, those mistakes will be omitted. I personally am very little optimistic about the rooftop market going forward, particularly the market consisting of government subsidies. But nevertheless, there is enough room for investors to step in on a private purchase agreements where we have some sort of parity between the current offtake, or rather the discount rate that is being offered to off-takers, and the supposed new feed-in tariff, which is supposed to be somewhere between 5 and 6 cents from gossips purely. But essentially, if the feed-in tariff drops at that level, I think self-consumption or private PPA projects will become much more interesting because there is enough room for investors to one, make a discount to the current industrial tariff in Vietnam, and still make a good margin from the LCOE levels that we see, particularly in the southern of the country. The problem is that northern Vietnam will be off the map because that's where the yield is up to 35% lower than the south, and if that's not subsidized by the government, we will not see much development, if any, at all. So again, it all depends on the new regulation that will come in force, hopefully sooner than later, because we have seen a gap of 11 months between feed-in 1 and feed-in 2. Hopefully this time it will be shorter than that, but we're already in August and the feed-in tariff expired in December. So again, it all depends on the new regulation, and the market will definitely see significant contraction. This year we'll probably see not more than 1 gigawatt of installations, all these small self-consumption projects that are taking place here and there.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing. I think there was issues with agriculture solar project in the past, and obviously the government will be scrutinize this kind of business model stricter, and I think you talk about the new regulation on feed-in tariff. So my next question would be to Mr. Lim. That as you know, right, the government will issue new feed-in tariff for rooftop solar, and it's very likely that the feed-in tariff will be much lower than the existing one. We expect that it would be 30-40% lower than the current feed. So do you think that would have an adverse impact to the developer in developing new rooftop project in Vietnam?
Hi, sir. I think thank you for your question. So I think as the Mr. Milan earlier mentioned, from all the different I would say gossips or news in the market, definitely seems to show that the new feed tree will be lower than before. And there are also other mechanisms that the authorities are looking at, like auction or DPPA for solar. So definitely this will have a certain impact on developers and also the investors. But at the same time, currently, we still cannot be sure of what it will be the final policy that's going to be issued. But meanwhile, I think Vietnam solar market is still attractive for developers. Then I think if the price is lower than expected, and if this scenario does happen, then we know that developers need to really analyze the IRR index carefully and not put more calculation on the LCOE and BOS cost to see how we can have better performance ratio, looking at other ways to increase the yield, like even considering other kinds of proposal, like maybe tracker for the land ground-mounted projects. Then also, I think as mentioned by Mr. Milan, yes, definitely, I think going forward, self-consumption projects might be the main scenario, rather than looking at how to sell electricity back to PVN. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think basically market player kind of agree that I think going forward self-consumption would would be the way to go. So I think with that, I think the new fit to be released by the government, I think it would not have much impact to the market, for industry CNI market. So yeah, also relating to from the policy perspective, right? I have a question to Ms. Chang, as a person who's managing the project in deep sea, right? I think other than the new regulation, I think even the current regulation and policy for rooftop solar, we still need a lot of improvement or clarification. So from your perspective, what are the changes or the improvement on the current policy for rooftop solar do you want to see in the coming time in order to facilitate the rooftop solar business?
Thank you for the question. Regarding the current policies, I think I would like to first explain a bit about the business model of rooftop solar for deep sea. So the business model we have today is a bit different from what you normally see in the market, in the way that the industrial zone has its own power distribution company. We operate and manage our own power network within the industrial zone to serve all our tenants. So, and for the rooftop solar schemes, we ask our tenants to participate in the scheme where they allow us to install the rooftop, so the solar panels on the buildings of their roof, but the electricity generated from these panels will be injected directly into our internal grid, not to the individual manufacturing plants, and not injected into the national original grid of EVN. So we see so this is 100% behind the meter, and we see this as a more sustainable model where we are not subject to any gold rush, not subject to any regulation changes in the FRR. And we only install in line with the demands that we see from our consumers within the network. And this also allows us to centralize the monitoring and the management of all the system instead of managing each system individually. So for our business model, I think there are a number of policies improvements that could help us accelerate the growth. And the first item that I will think of is a more liberty in terms of permitting for rooftop solar system that is above 1 megawatt. Because so for the limits we have today in the laws for 1.25 megawatt peak, that means all of our developments more than 1.25, we have to apply for a number of more additional permits before the system can get running and be injected into the grid. And we would like to also see a framework there for storage solutions, because storage today will be the solution to how we can install more solar capacities and to increase the renewable energy mix within the consumption of the industrial zones. So I think with these improvements in the law, we can accelerate a more sustainable growth for rooftop solar system, because all these behind the meter installations, they do not require additional transmission investment in transmission infrastructure investment for EVN. We're not subject to curtailing, and all of the installations are carefully calculated in line with the actual consumptions. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Chang, for your sharing. Yeah, I think you mentioned about the capacity limitation. I think of the developer hope that the government can consider the current 1 megawatt limitation and somehow expand it. I think that would be very helpful for basically to attract more larger scale projects and more investment. Yeah, so for Arno, yeah, I think we discussed about COVID situation a lot. I think from the last couple of years, but At the moment, right, the situation in Vietnam is really worse than ever. I think in the past, basically developer managed to, despite of the COVID and all the restriction in the country, but a lot of developer can still develop the project. But with the situation in Ho Chi Minh City and other province in the south these days, do you see that it would have a major impact to your business plan? And do you have any solution for that?
I don't have a solution for the COVID-19 apart from the vaccine, I think. However, COVID-19 is not really affecting us in terms of business plan, since we're convinced that there is a market. I mean, the market is here, and there is a demand for our integrated investor operated model, selling the electricity directly to the clients. But for sure, it's delaying the decision-making process, because we are working mainly with industrial facilities, and there's a lot of them who have halted their operations, and some are also facing temporary closures. However, I would say we expect the market to bounce back quickly, because we strongly believe that also this period is a good time for the industrials and businesses to reflect, generally speaking, on the operations and explore how to improve their business. So what better way than just installing a solar system on the rooftop and enjoying the savings and fulfilling their sustainability targets. So I think it's going to be a great time. We can make a great use of this time as an industrial to rethink our way of operating.
Yeah, thank you. Then for Milan, do you during the development of the business in Vietnam for your company, do you find it difficult to find good customers for you to sign the PPA with? And do you think that the COVID-19 situation would make it financially difficult for CNI industry and somehow impact the credit worthiness of potential customers? Do you see any challenges in basically finding a customer for your new business?
No, it's actually very simple and very easy. And the reason is because more and more multinational large corporations are setting operations in Vietnam, moving away from other countries. Just as an example, in 2018, there have been, I think, 33 or 35 companies that are part of RE100 group. In 2021, 3 years later, we have about 60. So essentially, large corporations are moving to Vietnam, and they are usually the early adopters of solar. This is due to multiple reasons, but essentially the commitment towards zero carbon footprint is the key drive. It's not so much economical drive that they are experiencing than actual commitments for the carbon offset. The COVID situation has not affected much the business, our business, fortunately. But there has been companies which have experienced troubles. One of our customers is in the aviation industry. And of course, short to mid-term, these type of businesses are, of course, having challenging times. However, there is enough support on a government and a private level, and those companies are still doing quite okay, and they're prompt to survive. So yeah, there has been a couple of hiccups here and there, but in general, it's all good.
So they can still pay.
That's the key.
Yeah, and you're talking about customer, right? Yeah, we have commercial, and then we have industrial. clients. So do you have different approach to that two kind of clients?
No,
Yes.
the only difference is that the rates that they paid for power are different, and so commercial customers can enjoy much higher discounts on their tariffs. But the problem with commercial customers is that they don't have roof space, or it's extremely limited. So essentially, those projects are really small in size, and they are not too attractive for key major players. And so I think the approach is pretty much the same. It's just that the discount rate is quite different.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and now if we look at the customer from customer perspective, right? I have a question to Ms. Chang. When the tenant in your industrial park, when they use the rooftop solar, when they participate in your rooftop solar business model, what are the main concerns that you normally see that they have, and how do you address the concern from your customer?
Thanks for your question. For our tenants who participate in our rooftop solar business model, we often see concerns on the technical, on the operations side, and also concerns regarding the insurance. For the technical side, we often see questions on the load requirements of the solar panels on their buildings, and questions on any potential leakage as a result of drilling on the roof. But for us, for any project, before we start the study or the design, we always do a structural assessment for not just the roof, but for the whole building, to make sure that everything is in line technically before we start. For the leakage, we implement today for all of our projects a climbing system. So the solar panels are actually attached to the roofs without any drilling required. For the operations side, we often see questions on any impact in terms of electrical network, any impact in terms of the normal resources that they will have to allocate to operate and manage these rooftop solar systems. And in our business model, because all the power will be injected into the internal grid of the industrial zone and no direct access to the local network of that manufacturing plant. So in terms of operation, we do not see any impact there. And for the whole grid, we use our internal expertise to conduct studies on potential grid impact, also on the potential solar capacity that's in line with the demand that we see, so that all the risks in terms of operation and technical will be eliminated from the beginning before we develop the projects. And in terms of insurance, we see today a set of well-established technical requirements or standards that we follow strictly, and also we seek on the quality and the safety in terms of our installation and management. So all these main concerns are normally minimized or already taken care of by the business model to see.
So basically, the client want to make sure that the quality, the safety. Okay. Yeah, and I think now for developing the projects, solar project, I think financing is also a very important part, right? And for Agno, from your experience doing projects in Vietnam, what are the key elements that you think that are necessary to secure financing for rooftop solar projects? And as the market has become mature, do you think that it would be easier for developer to secure financing from both domestic bank or international bank?
That's a good question. Thank you. First, at HCCP, we want to partner with companies who share the same views about high quality components and long-term performance. So I think there's two key elements here that are on both sides of the pitch. The first one is that you need, as an investor and developer, to really carefully analyze the project consumption and the design of our solutions according to the client needs, because we're selling exclusively down to the client. And second, I think you need also to do like a very careful due diligence of the company you're going to partner with. We pay a lot of attention to the financial health, but also the business strategies, like investment perspective. How long the business going to remain in place in Vietnam? What is the target for this type of industry? So this is really, let's say, two things you need to cover on the engineering side to make sure that you design the appropriate system according to the needs of the client, and also make sure that you have, let's say, a good client on the other. And then I think securing the financing is not a difficult task, but you need to do it well.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and I think once we develop the project, right, I think it's important that to make the project profitable, right? And I think at the moment the market in Vietnam, I would say, quite competitive, with a lot of high-profile, experienced developer already available on the market. So my question to Mr. Lim Cheng Boon is that what are the elements you think the developer can improve to invest in to make the project more competitive and to maximize the profit? I think it may include using the technologies that you mentioned in your presentations. But what are the key things that you think that developer need to focus on?
Thank you, Mr. Lee, for the question. So I think in terms of competitiveness and maximization of profit, for now, I would say that developers focus more on on the LCOE part, how to really reduce the LCOE rather than keep looking at the initial investment cost. So because the project itself is going to last for many number of years coming down the road. So on the overall LCOE parameter is still, I think, the most important factor that we should look at. So as mentioned in my presentation earlier, so when we use different technologies, different high power PV modules with a unique design, so this will help the developers save on the system costs, and of course at the same time, selection of components using quality solar modules, quality inverters, and other BOS components to ensure the long-term reliability of the system is also a very important point, so that in the long run the developer has the assurance on the solar system that is continuously generating power and continuously able to either sell electricity or for their own self-consumption. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I also have another question to Mr. Lim, because I think in the audience, I guess we have various attendees from industrial factories and industrial zone attending this session. So can you share with the audience basically the pros and cons basically to have a solar system to be installed on the factories, and if they do have a need to install rooftop solar system on the factory, what should they do? How they should process?
Thank you for the question. So I think not at this moment now, since the progression of solar for so many number of years, especially I would say that the LCOE of solar energy is already lower than that of the other conventional energy sources, and it's expected that the LCOE will be on a downward trend. So when we look at overall how we put together a solar system, whether is it on a rooftop or whether is it on a ground mount, it's not complicated kind of process, and the lead time itself to develop the project is also really short. as compared to other kind of energy sources. So if the factory owners do have a rooftop space that's available, so definitely I think they should consider installing solar on that. So they can also work with or consult with different experienced EPC to have an initial design and do the load calculation and what would be the number of I would say the solar capacity that they can install. So and this is also pretty flexible. So depending on the usable rooftop space, I mean they can always design and configure to meet the needs. And you can see that actually there's a lot of potential space that can be used. Whether is it rooftops, open car parks, big factory rooftops, as long as there's consumption or human activities or business activities that's in the area, then there will be a need for energy. And within that area, I'm sure there might be some available spaces we can consider putting on the solar. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and as we see that there are many experienced good developer on the market, right? So if a potential customer want to select which would be the developer they can go with to sign the 20 years PPA, then what are the key elements do you think that they should look at to select the right partner?
I think personally, I would say that developers with a good track record, with a long time experience in the solar industry, definitely will have enjoy a higher kind of assurance that can provide to the end client. And I think overall, working together by not only working with the reputable developers, also selecting the correct components or the correct, I would say the correct design and the kind of financial model, which will help to ensure the overall sustainability of their solar system.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I would like to go back to the point that Ms. Chang mentioned earlier. Right? I'm a bit curious about the business model that DeepSea is currently implementing. Right? I understand that in DeepSea you install a system with a quite large capacity, and the power generated is uploaded to the grid, internal grid of the industrial park, and instead of selling to specific tenants. So what are the pros and cons do you see in running this unique business? And do you think that other industrial park developer in Vietnam can adopt your model in Vietnam?
Yes, thank you very much for the questions. The business model that we are running today is indeed quite unique regarding if we look at all the industrial zones that are operating in Vietnam as well. So in terms of the advantages, we see that the rooftop solar developments is part of our eco-industrial park initiative that we are currently working on with the Vietnamese government and also with UNIDO. So renewable energy is part of these eco-industrial park initiatives, and it benefits mostly our tenants who will be able to enjoy the green energy and the green growth without impact on their operation and without impact on their financial positions, and they can actually have additional financial benefits there. Also, for us, we see the large-scale development as a optimization of our capex savings. We also see certain savings in terms of time and resources there when we do large-scale projects, that we avoid the multiple applications in terms of permitting for each small project. However, running this unique business model will also have certain disadvantages in the way that the law today does not have a specific framework for large-scale projects. That means we need to spend more time obtaining the generation permit, construction permit, the power development adjustments. And And for other industrial zones, I think this is a very interesting business model that they can adapt, provided that the industrial zone has its own power distribution company, that it has management over the internal grid of the industrial zone. And for this, I think the industrial zone will need to have certain technical knowledge there in terms of, and they might need to find partners who have experience in distribution network, in our power operations, that can help them both with the distribution part and also with the power generation part.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I agree that yeah, we basically industrial park need to have certain special conditions to implement this. And even if they have that, I guess getting the master plan approval or power generation license and everything, it can be quite challenging and time-consuming process. Yeah, I have a question to Milan about an element that I think we see very commonly provided in all the PPA, which is the environmental attributes. So normally developer would be entitled to environmental attributes, and it can be the renewable energy certificate and RECs and things like that. But it is still new in Vietnam. So in the PPA that you sign with the client, do you have this arrangement? And if so, do you have any plan to somehow monetize this benefit?
It's a commercial discussion. Big corporates are usually those who insist on owning the RECs because that's for them is the key metric for their carbon offset. And so again, multinational corporations usually own the RECs. Those that are rather smaller companies and not perfectly aware of how RECs work, and they have no carbon offset commitments, they're much more flexible in giving the right to the developer / investor to own those RECs. RECs in Vietnam as of today are not significant proportion of project revenues. And the problem is that there is a lot more supply than actual demand, particularly in Vietnam. Now, when it comes to international trade, Vietnamese produced RECs are some of the lowest costs, particularly in Southeast Asia or Asia. So a lot of Vietnamese produced RECs are being sold elsewhere. But in Vietnam itself, there is no particular market for RECs. Or if there is such, then RECs are being procured on a global headquarter level and not so much in Vietnam. So this market is underdeveloped in Vietnam. It will definitely 100% grow much more than what it is today. But as I said, revenues from RECs as of today are not significant. I mean, it's a very small percentage from the overall revenues, and that's why it's considered. A lot of developers, what I see is that they are very flexible in whether they award the customer with the RECs or they want to keep them.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I hope that once all the pending regulation on solar auction on new feed or DPPA, whatever, have been finalized and released, and I hope that MOIT will spend time to study more about this and issue regulation. We will see more development. Right?
Yes, definitely. On the government PPA, there is no mention of who owns the RECs. So essentially, a lot of developers of large-scale projects do require clarification letters from EVN to essentially award them with rights for owning the RECs, but that's missed by the current regulation, and really hopefully in the future they will put clarification on what happens to the regs.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think before we open the floor to the audience, I have a last question to Agno. Yes, I think we are still seeing a new developer coming into Vietnam market, and with the market potential right now, with the situation right now, what would be your advice to potential developers so that they can start out their business successfully?
You asked me to give advice to my competitors.
Just something that they should.
Yeah. I think there's three things you need to focus on and that are essential to me. The first one is to define clearly your business development strategy, what's going to be your competitive advantage, and what's going to differentiate you, because it's a competitive market, right? Second one, I think, would be to get an experienced and hands-on team on the ground who knows well the market and is able to work effectively with the different stakeholders, whether it's the clients, the EPC, EVN, PCCC, and so on and so forth. And last but not least, the third one, my third advice would say to keep a very close eye on the market regulations, because it's evolving continuously, and especially at this moment with the new power development master plan 8 set to be released in the coming months.
Yeah, thank you. It's very helpful advice. It's whether we can do it or not. Right? Yeah, I think we have a few minutes for the Q&A, and I've seen a number of questions show up in the system. The first one is, how do you finance rooftop solar project in Vietnam? What is dollar per megawatt total investment? So, yeah, may I ask Agno or Milan to advise on this, the financing model?
I can give a quick answer. It depends on the project type, whether it's going to be industrial, commercial, the type of technology that is used as well. So it's difficult to give a number, give a figure per megawatt peak without these kind of specifications.
There's a question, will battery storage also include in the rooftop solar in Vietnam? If yes, for 1 megawatt rooftop solar, what should be the size of the battery storage? So maybe Mr. Lim, you respond to this question. It's about the storage.
I think in terms of battery storage wise, this is a hot topic that everyone is looking at, given the how do we ensure the stability of the solar power that is coming so-called supplying in the grid for the self-consumption. So I think there's no straightforward answer to know what's the size of the battery storage. It also depends on your usage and what is your using pattern and the model that you are operating. Is it self-consumption or selling energy? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, thank you. Another question, what is a typical IRR for rooftop solar project before end of 2020? And given the Zoom new feed, what will be the estimate new IRR reduction? So Milan, can you share some view on this? IRR before end of 2020 and after under the new feed.
Feed-in 2, the IRR would range between, I would say, our lowest IRR on a project base is 9% and the highest is 26%. What will happen from now on is again subject to the feed-in tariff, and if it's confirmed to be 35 to 40% lower, then essentially EVN PPAs for rooftop projects will become extremely unattractive because the return rates will drop significantly. As I said, I cannot estimate to what levels, but again, a lot of people will prefer to go with private PPAs instead.
Right. Yes, I agree. I think if we choose self-consumption is the way to go, then I think it should not be a big difference here. I think we just have time for the last question, and I would select the one regarding the market status. Have we seen dramatic drop in investing in rooftop solar project after end of 2020? Still waiting for the new tariff to come out. I think from my end, yeah, there's a dramatic drop in the investment because EVN no longer purchase power from the rooftop project until the new FID is issued. So for the project like agricultural solar project, or project that's basically sell power to EVN, they cannot do, and that's why I think people now have to focus on self-consumption, and for that you would need a very good partner to go with you for 20 years, and I think that's more difficult. So I guess that's why the reason for the drop. I wonder if anybody have any other comment on this. Yeah. Yeah. Otherwise, I think Shihan, I think we are reaching to the end of the session today. So I would hand over to you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Liu. And big thanks to all of our speakers for bringing us such a great panel discussion and information sharing. And thanks to all the attendees to join our webinar today. And let me just share my screen really quick. So we really appreciate all speakers' great support and your valuable comments for this market. So we will share the recordings and the PowerPoint slides that were used for today's webinar to all of your registration email by the end of next week. And should you have any questions, please also do feel free to contact our team through the email address showing on the slide right now. And please also make sure to follow the Solar Talks webinar on LinkedIn so you can get the first-hand webinar update information. So thanks again, everyone. So to attend our webinar today, we will see you next time. Thank you.